All right, Bitcoiners, we need to talk about COLDCARD. First of all, I just want to make one thing clear before we get into the technical stuff. Bitcoin wasn't hacked. This was a problem with how certain Bitcoin wallets generated the secret information used to protect people's Bitcoin. And unfortunately, this wasn't a small problem. We're talking about nearly 89 million worth of Bitcoin reportedly taken from more than 1,000 wallets. Some of these people did exactly what Bitcoiners have been telling them for years. Get your Bitcoin off the exchange. Buy a hardware wallet. Hold your own keys. Take responsibility for your money. And they did. So how did their Bitcoin still get stolen? That's what we're going to break down today without turning this into a computer science class. First, what actually happened? To understand this, we need to understand one Bitcoin word: entropy. Don't worry, I didn't really get it at first. I never really paid attention to it, so don't let it scare you. For this conversation, entropy basically means randomness. When your hardware wallet creates your seed phrase, those 12 or 24 words you're always being told never to share, those words need to come from something extremely random. Why? Because if someone can predict how those words were created, they may eventually be able to figure out your seed. Think about it like choosing a password. If I tell you my password is a completely random combination of 30 letters, numbers, and symbols, you're probably not going to guess it. But if I tell you it's my dog's name and my birthday, then we have a problem. That's essentially what makes this COLDCARD situation so serious. Certain COLDCARD firmware had a problem with the process used to generate that randomness. Instead of always getting the same randomness the system expected, under affected conditions, the software could fall back to a much weaker source. So the seed phrase still looked random, the owner still had 24 words, the device worked, Bitcoin arrived at the addresses, everything appeared normal. But underneath all of that, the number of possible seeds an attacker might have to search could be dramatically smaller than it should have been. And that's the key to understanding this attack. The attacker didn't necessarily need to steal somebody's seed phrase. If the seed was created from weak enough randomness, an attacker could potentially recreate the possibilities until they found the right one. That's brute force. You hear some people say like brute force attack. Think about it like a combination lock. Imagine if I give you a lock and tell you there are trillions upon trillions upon trillions of possible combinations. You're probably not going to sit there trying to guess it. But then you discover something. The machine that created my combination only picked from a much smaller group of possibilities. So now you don't have to search everything. You only have to search that smaller group. The lock didn't change. The combination didn't magically disappear. What happened was that process that created the combination was weak. And that's the easiest way to understand what happened here. And for Bitcoiners, that's terrifying because your seed phrase is everything. Your hardware wallet can break. You can lose a device. You can buy another device. But if somebody figures out your seed, they don't need your COLDCARD. They don't need to break into your house. They don't need your physical wallet. They have your keys. And as Bitcoiners love to say, not your keys, not your coins. I say, not your cheese. All right. Well, there's another side to that saying. If someone else discovers your keys, they're not just your keys anymore. So where does AI come into this? This is where the story gets really interesting because it's also where we need to be careful. There's been discussion in the Bitcoin and security communities about whether increasingly powerful AI tools could make finding vulnerabilities like this much faster. And that bigger concern is legitimate. Think about what AI can do. Instead of a security researcher manually reading thousands and thousands of lines of code, looking for like one tiny mistake, AI systems can increasingly help analyze code at enormous speed. A bug could sit unnoticed for years and suddenly become much easier to find. But here's the important distinction. We should not automatically say that AI caused this COLDCARD attack unless investigators prove that connection. What we can say is that this incident gives us a preview of a bigger security problem. Open source code allows the good guys to inspect the code. That's one of its strengths, but attackers can inspect it too. And as AI gets better at analyzing software, that race is going to get faster on both sides. That means Bitcoin security has to evolve with it. Does this mean self-custody is dead? Absolutely not. But I do think Bitcoiners need to have a more mature conversation about what self-custody actually means. We've made be your own bank sound simple, and philosophically, it is powerful. You control the keys. Nobody needs to give you permission to access your Bitcoin. But being your own bank also means taking responsibility for security. And honestly, it's a little harder because now you have hardware, firmware, backups, seed generation, passphrases, multi-sig, inheritance, physical security, operation security. Like, that's a lot for the average person. And this incident reminds us of something important. Self-custody doesn't eliminate risk. It changes the type of risk you're taking. Leave Bitcoin with a third party and you have counterparty risk. Hold the keys yourself and now you have personal security and operational risk. That doesn't mean everybody should run to an ETF either. And it doesn't mean everybody should leave their Bitcoin on an exchange. It means there isn't one custody solution that's automatically right for every person. The Bitcoin answer shouldn't be, everybody has to have security exactly like me. No. The better answer is, understand your risks and build a security setup you can actually manage correctly. Now, what should COLDCARD users do? Now, this is like the important part, because if you generated your seed on an effective COLDCARD setup, don't assume that updating that firmware magically fixes your existing seed. It doesn't. Think back to our combination lock example. Updating the new device can fix how new combinations are created. It doesn't change the combinations you already have. If your existing seed may have been created with weak randomness, that seed needs to be treated as potentially compromised. That means generating a completely new seed using a secure method and moving the Bitcoin to addresses controlled by that new seed. And here's another important point. Taking the same potentially compromised seed phrase and typing it into another brand of hardware wallet doesn't solve the problem. The vulnerability follows the seed, not the COLDCARD sitting on your desk. If somebody can calculate the seed, putting those same 24 words into another device doesn't suddenly make those words stronger. And if you're unsure whether your particular device, firmware, seed generation method, passphrase, or multi-sig setup is affected, don't guess based on something you saw in a random X post. Check the latest guidance from the manufacturer and reputable Bitcoin security researchers. But most of all, please don't panic. I know that might sound strange after everything I just told you, but this is really important. Don't let urgency turn into carelessness. Bitcoin transactions are final. If you're moving a significant amount of Bitcoin, verify what you're doing. Check the address on the hardware device itself. Send a small test transaction first. Confirm that you can access the new wallet. Then move the larger balance. There's an old saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. That absolutely applies to Bitcoin security. Because imagine protecting yourself from one vulnerability, only to lose your Bitcoin because you rushed through the migration. We don't want that. Here's the bigger lesson. I don't think the lesson from COLDCARD is that self-custody doesn't work. And I also don't think it's hardware wallets can't be trusted. I think it's a much more important lesson. Bitcoin gives us the ability to control our own money, but that freedom comes with responsibility. And our security practices have to keep getting better. We should be asking better questions. How is my seed generated? What am I trusting? What happens if this hardware company disappears tomorrow? Could my family recover my Bitcoin if something happened to me? Am I using a setup because I actually understand it, or because somebody on Bitcoin Twitter told me it was the best? Those are healthy questions, because self-custody isn't about buying a device and throwing it into a drawer for 10 years. It's about understanding enough about your setup to protect yourself. And that's exactly why we keep Bitcoin simple here. You shouldn't need a computer science degree to understand how to protect your money, but you do need to understand the basics. So here's what I want you to remember. Your hardware wallet protects your keys. Your seed phrase can recreate those keys. And the randomness used to create that seed is incredibly important. That's the heart of this entire story. Bitcoin didn't fail. The blockchain wasn't hacked. A security system used to protect Bitcoin failed under certain conditions. That's a huge difference. And as the investigation continues, we'll keep breaking down what we learned without fear, without the hype, and without making Bitcoin harder than it needs to be. Because the goal isn't just to hold your own keys. The goal is to understand what you're holding and how to protect it.